This is Meredith for Real, the Curious Introvert, and I'm Meredith. Around here, we explore taboo questions and societal blind spots. Each high contrast guest gives you the layer deep dive you crave, not just the Google results making headlines. My mission, and yours if you choose to accept it, is to inspire curiosity by exploring the nuance and paradox of our world. Each episode is different, so bring your ADD and your earbuds and have a look around. Many of the topics here are the kind that might be whispered about in private, but not spoken openly about. This episode is the reverse of that. Societally, we are speaking more openly, I would say, about the opioid epidemic. But we still have a blind spot when it comes to situations that are close to us. We kind of maintain this black and white version of our world, so our brain blocks out any of the confusing gray area stuff. My guest navigates her own gray areas in real time in this conversation. We talk about how her parents' secret financial problems and prescription drug addiction led to compartmentalized identities, the pain of truth versus the pain of denial, and how shame and grief can create a really confusing mess. If you're one of my insiders, I want to thank you for suggesting episodes on grief recently. I hope this one serves you and becomes part of your own healing process. If you'd like to offer some episode topic suggestions, you can come on over to my private Facebook group. I also post content in there that I don't share anywhere else, so I promise to make it more than just another group cluttering up your feed. You can search MFR Curious Insiders on Facebook or click the link in the show notes to request to join. Lastly, if you end up liking this episode, you'll also like the one with the death doula. You'll hear me reference that episode in this conversation. It's episode 278. All right, friends, keep it curious. Whether you're in the US or not, everyone can relate to what's known as the American dream: white picket fences, tight-knit communities, and leaving a legacy for the next generation. But for many, the road to Mayberry is a lot more complicated. And this was the case for my next guest. Before she was an Emmy Award-winning ESPN sideline reporter, she was an 18-year-old in her dorm room when she found out that her parents had died just hours of each other due to a hidden battle with opioids. When her world came crashing down, the next decade became a wrestling match with the truth. Today, she's going to share her story and unpack her thoughts on legacy, shame, and identity for what's sure to be a more relatable American experience. Navigating the messy middle with grace and falling in love with her story, Lauren Sisler. Thanks for being here.
Hello, thank you for having me. I so appreciate it. What an introduction, girl. You got it going on.
You're so sweet. I really enjoyed your book. As I was reading it, I'm, of course, like experiencing it as a reader, but I'm also kind of putting myself in your shoes of, oh my gosh, what would it be like to write down my life story? So thank you for doing that, because from the people that I've spoken with, writing a book, first of all, is no easy feat. And second of all, writing your own story, especially one that you've kind of had a complicated relationship with, which I'm sure we'll get into. I just thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, it is one of those things where, for years, everyone's like, write a book, tell your story, tell your story. I just didn't realize the depths of it. And I think that for so many years, having, as you mentioned, the complicated aspect of it and having a very complex relationship with my own story, I didn't realize the depths of it. And this forced me to go so deep that I'm like, but when I tell you what came on the other side of that was this incredible healing.
Yeah.
That I'm still just processing, like feeling the weight and really some of the weight being lifted as we speak. It's pretty cool.
Well, from my vantage point, a lot of it centered around identity. So let's start there with who your family was, at least from the outside looking in.
So I love how you introduce this segment because you talk about the white picket fence. And I'll tell you, knowing my family, knowing my parents especially, and my mom wanted to be a wife and a mom. And that is the life she wanted. Like, she wanted to raise me and my brother and to love us and to carry us through it, and was just the ultimate cheerleader And so you talk about that white picket fence, and I think in so many ways, I grew up with that same notion of what family was, and I thought that I did have the picture perfect family. I mean, no, we were not perfect, but when I was growing up, I just saw 2 parents that just loved my brother and I with unconditional love, wrapped their arms around us, cheered us on, lifted us up when we failed and faced trouble and adversity, and were ultimately just there and pushed us, encouraged us, all the things that now as I've walked through life, recognize not everybody has that gift from
No.
family. And again, I think that we all sort of have these brushstrokes of perfection and what we perceive to be the ultimate family, but underneath it all, there is so much dysfunction. And I think we can all attest every family's got its own dysfunction
Yeah.
everywhere. Let's be real. Let's call it a spade, right?
Yeah.
But growing up, I just felt like we had all the love and support that myself and my brother needed to grow, to thrive, to succeed, to find that pathway. And, I think that is what I'm still grateful for to this day, that I had that foundation. And as I mentioned, not everyone is so fortunate. And I am grateful for that. But also recognizing that in the midst of what I believe to be perfection, there were a lot of cracks and a lot of holes and a lot of things being swept under the rug. So here we go. Buckle up, baby.
Buckle up, baby. Well, I think it's important to set that stage because I think, as I believe you and your family experienced, the contrast of these two worlds colliding was part of the trauma. And so obviously I've already given it away that unfortunately your parents passed of this terrible prescription medicine addiction. But when people hear that, immediately there's a picture that comes to mind. And so in your book, when you were like, my mom labeled all of my items for college move-in day, even my shower shoes. I'm like, oh my God, that paints a very different picture. And your parents were at every gymnastics practice, which, talk about that. Not only was this the white picket fence from the outside, but your collegiate and your career path was already like in your sights early on. It was gymnastics or bust, and then athletic doctor, right?
Yeah, sports doctor. Yep. Athletic doctor, athletic trainer. I wanted to go in that sports direction as a former athlete. Yeah, growing up, gymnastics became the sport. Like that was it. And in the world of gymnastics, it really is a commitment. Like it is year round, it is training, it is over 20 hours a week. I was commuting over an hour each way to practice. And so not only was it like my investment, it was my parents' investment too, because we're spending money, we're driving all these different places, going to gymnastics competitions. So for me, it truly was a family investment, a family operation, a family affair. We were doing all the things together. And it was so important to me when I got to that cross section of, okay, what's next with my career? It's either end it when high school, you graduate, you go to college. But for me, I was like, no, I want to take that next step. And I knew because my family financially needed that assistance for a scholarship to college, first and foremost. And then if I wanted to do the med school route, right, we definitely didn't have the funding for that. And so that was the idea, was like, okay, get the college scholarship, get that paid for. And then this will set the track right for me to be on my way in my career in sports medicine.
Yeah. So talk more about the financial part, because the behind the scenes was a different picture. You, as a young person, had an awareness that scholarships needed to be accomplished, which was part of your drive to excel at gymnastics. But what did you find out later behind the scenes? What was the details of the truth that was going on?
So essentially, we grew up in Roanoke, Virginia. When we were transitioning from middle school into high school, and my brother and I, we actually moved out into the country. And my dad had acquired some land from my great uncle, and it was like their dream home. Let's go build a house out in the country. And so this is an hour away from where I was training, an hour away from where my dad went to work. But my parents ultimately wanted to build this dream home and still continue living our lives. And we move into a trailer for a year. Basically, that trailer was the midway point to get us ready to move into the new house. And so it was like, we got to go live in this trailer for a year. And of course, I was being such a brat about it because I'm 12 years old and embarrassed that I'm living in a pea green trailer that literally was donated to the fire department after we moved out. That's how bad it was, y'all. Okay, condemned. But it's what worked for our family to get us all together and to get us ready to move into this house. So we knew it's like light at the end of the tunnel. We move into this house. Here's what I didn't know, Meredith. So they start building this house. It's out in the country. Mind you, I mean, you've got to build roads and you've got to run power lines and you've got to do all these things. And oh, by the way, that's not cheap. And you run into problems, you run into snags. So my parents, number one, first and foremost, way blew out the budget on the house. And we're talking, I mean, this is still a very modest middle class house, 2,000 square feet, beautiful little brick ranch style house. It wasn't some big mansion or anything, but there were so many little things that kept happening along the way, issues with the contractor, all these different things that were developing and happening. But, I'm not privy to it. It's not like my parents are laying a ledger down and being like, well, this went well and this didn't go well. And so all these things are happening. And then we move into this house. And for me, it's like celebration. Well, all while this is happening, then my mom's health problems start to develop. Okay, so we move into this house. My mom is then diagnosed with degenerative disc disease. She has to have multiple surgeries over the course of a few years. And so, mind you, she's working part-time because she wants to make sure my brother and I are where we need to be at practice and all the different things. My dad's working full-time at the VA Medical Center, commuting over an hour each way. And then boom, mom gets hit with her medical problems. And now she's having to file for disability. She's not working, not bringing in any sort of income. And it's just like the snowball effect started happening, right? And little did I know at the time, as this continued to transpire, like my parents are literally stroking $10 checks to the power company to keep the lights on. Meanwhile, we're living in what we would all consider our dream home out in the country, doing life. Life is good. I'll never forget. My parents would write, they wrote checks. Like we didn't do the credit card thing in my family. It was always checks. Okay. And it's wild to me because literally my parents would write like a $20 check for me to go fill up my car with gas. Well, me, I'm over here like, okay, well, why don't I just fill up my car with $8 of gas and then I'll save $12 so I can go get dinner. Like I used to love going to Red Lobster. For whatever reason, I love those cheddar biscuits, man. Those cheddar biscuits were so good. So literally I would just rack up money and stash it away from these checks my parents were sending me, giving me to fill up my car with gas. And then I would go treat myself to a dinner with a friend. And it's just so funny to me because back then I did not realize like my parents were so intentional. Like that $20 was really like all we had. Like it's just, and looking back on, I'm like, wow, but I was so naive to it, like so in the dark, just had no idea.
Yeah, it is funny looking back because on the one hand, you're a teenager, so you're not aware of it. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, your parents are trying their best to keep that identity of the white picket fence. And I think I read further back towards the end of your book that you found out that even they had opened up like a credit card in your name for Christmas gifts for you, I think. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just can't imagine
And
what they were
that's,
going through.
and it's crazy to think, yeah, because ultimately what happens is they pass away. I don't even know the credit card exists. Like all of a sudden I got creditors calling and they're like, hey, you owe all this money. And I'm like, wait a sec, I didn't charge this. What is going on here? And so it's just all these things started to snowball. And I know that my parents never intended to use those credit cards to then not pay it back. They
Right.
didn't do it maliciously to be like, well, she'll figure it out later in life. No. But the problem is it became a rob Peter to pay Paul situation in which they could never get out of it. And I think that you start to unwind just this mess and try to understand like how they got into this mess to begin with. And I will say, I don't think my parents were ever great with money. I will say this, I know my dad was not good with money. My dad loved to spend the money, whether we had it or not. My mom was the realist. She's like, hey, Butch, you need to pump the brakes, right? And my dad was always the promiser of the fancy, flashy car. We'll get you that sports car you want one day, Lauren. My mom's, no, we won't. So it was always like two personalities that I think balanced each other well. But I think ultimately a lot of the spending happened. My dad did struggle with alcoholism. So a lot of bad choices would happen when he would go on a weekend bender, and he would
Mm.
go spend money on something that we didn't have the money for. Like just things that just didn't make sense and sometimes wouldn't add up. But again, my dad was the big spender and it was just this perfect storm of perfect personalities and in circumstances that just created this like
Yeah.
And it's just, I think about it now because in my life as an adult with a child, it's hard for me. I mean, I guess I feel that pain because at times, even early in my like TV career, like I was making like $9 an hour. Okay. Like $9 an hour. Like that is like, oh, you can't even survive on that. And I remember having to like get credit cards and like basically get the no interest credit cards. And so you work your way up. But ultimately, I was able to build up my credit and build up my stability. But I think about how painful that must be to wake up every morning facing this reality. Number one, you're in a ton of pain, you're hurting, you've got to take medication for it, and you don't even know how you're going to keep the lights on for your family. I think about the immense pain that my parents must have felt every single day, waking up wondering how they're going to put one foot in front of the other and keep this family afloat.
I'm glad that you said the circumstances too, because I think that is an important factor in when the prescription medicine took kind of a dark turn because it was fentanyl. And as I understand, it's not like, oh, I have no pain. It's like, oh, I have no pain and all my problems have evaporated. Like it's a type of euphoria that is real dicey. Do you know at what point that it became an addiction? Or I don't even imagine if you could, but in your going back and unpacking everything, have you figured that out of when it became an addiction for both of your parents?
Looking back on it, so my mom had her first surgery back in 1999. So she was going to she was going to a neurosurgeon for the neck fusions. So I mentioned my dad was an alcoholic. Now he also had chronic back pain in which he had a metal plate that was like a permanent 10 unit in his back. So he had also been going to see a doctor to help with the chronic pain and was managing that. And so then mom gets diagnosed with this degenerative disc disease. And ultimately, that's a progression, right? So she gets the first neck fusion and then the second one, and then it's carpal tunnel, and then it's the foot surgery. And it's all these things that are tied to her back and obviously her discs and everything else. And, back then it's like, okay, well, she's going to get surgery. And then I remember her like wearing this neck brace for a while, and then she's out of the neck brace. But even where I think starting to unpack it, you start to see a transition to when I look back at pictures of her. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, you see someone that looks young and vibrant and springy and just happy. And then suddenly you start to see this transition into someone that she started gaining some weight and just someone that didn't always have a smile on her face. And almost in some ways, this like maybe fear or emptiness. And I'm unpacking this as we're talking because these are even things that I don't even know that I've addressed out loud. But I think where things really started to transition, we move into that house with the white picket fence, right? It was all but the white picket fence. And we're doing life. And then it's like all of a sudden, a year or two living in that house is when things just started to kind of do this. But I think the thing with my parents is they were always so good at, we focus on this, you and your brother focus on your academics and your schoolwork. And my brother was going in the Navy, like that was his focus. Like he didn't even care about the grades. For me, school, gymnastics. Like at one point I wanted to get a summer job and my parents were like, no, 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 you need to focus on gymnastics. You need to focus on schoolwork. And I'm thinking like, okay, this is how it's supposed to be. I'm 16 years old. This is how life works, right? Like your parents take care of things and you do your thing, you do you, and I do me, and everybody has their role. And I think they just did such a really good job of making me feel comfortable in my role.
Yeah.
And they were comfortable in their role.
Well, there's, I think, a little bit of comfort for Western families in busyness. I think that is how a lot of us reconcile the gray area because this identity of the perfect family, the identity of the mom and the dad, the identity of the son and the daughter, what you're telling me is that these identities were very compartmentalized, right? So like you were very focused on your job and everyone else had theirs, but your parents had this really messy gray area that didn't fit into a box because addicts are out of control and we're in control, and addicts are bad people and we're good people. And obviously later down the road, unbeknownst to you at the time, you would have that same wrestling match with those identities. But I think it's the gray area that we all struggle with when it comes to things that are more stigmatized.
I love that. Wow. I've never really unpacked it that way. And I think that is so true, the identity piece of it. Because we do grow up with what is the dad's role? What is the mom's role? And I think those are some of the barriers we do have to break down in a lot of ways because like the whole idea of the traditional family, like I don't like it doesn't even exist. Like what
Like,
is
what
it?
is
What
that?
what's
Yeah.
even is yeah, what even is that? Right. And you talk about I thrive in chaos. Like I think my therapist and I have unpacked this so many times. If things aren't doing this, like I'm like, what do I do with my hands? Like I thrive
Yeah.
in chaos, but I think it's because I was put into that situation at a very young age. But you talk about compartmentalizing, and I think that is such a big key. The therapy world, there's that idea of window of tolerance, right? You have this window of tolerance, and some people, their window is just like, and in a lot of ways, I think inadvertently with the experiences I had, my window of tolerance just blew wide open. Like you just like, whatever comes my way, like tornado can just blow through the window and I'm like, here we go. And I think that it has become that way because in so many ways I learned at a very young age to compartmentalize. And it started, I do believe, with my dad's alcohol addiction, because even growing up as a child, it was recognizing that something's amiss. Oh, my dad's drinking this weekend. He's on a bender. I knew the cycles. Okay, this will be a 2 or 3 day thing. And then we'll be back to normal. But in the meantime, I'm going to go play at my friend's house because I don't want her down here when my dad's acting ornery and being weird. And I don't want anybody to think something's off. And who knows, like if my mom and dad get into an argument, like how embarrassing. So I was already compartmentalizing that, putting it on a shelf because I mean, my dad was my world. And so even if he relapsed, a lot of times it was around the holidays. That's when a lot of relapses happen. But I always could forgive him. I always said, oh, it'll be okay. Put it on a shelf. We'll forget about it. Move on. Life is great. Same thing in gymnastics, right? We are trained and taught to continue, right? You fall down, you get back up, you forget about it, you move on. With every skill in a routine, with every routine, that's how it works. In gymnastics, you have 4 events, and it's like you fall on one event, you get back up, you keep going, you forget about that event, and you move on. And it was like I was just so good at like compartmentalizing everything. So I think in life, it kind of forced me to maybe ignore the reality of the things that were happening.
Yeah, I think it was an unfortunate perfect storm. Hey, Curiositors, just a quick pause to show gratitude to our sponsors and give you some special deals. From time to time, I recommend other podcasts you might like, and here's one I know that you're going to love. It's the Jordan Harbinger Show. I love it because it's smart without being too highbrow and 1000% ADD friendly. I know, you love it already. I'm a genuine true fan. When I have time to listen to podcasts just for pleasure, not, guest research, the Jordan Harbinger Show is my automatic choice. It's like when you're hungry and someone asks you what you want, and then before you even have a minute to think about it, you find yourself at Chick-fil-A because, obviously, Jordan's the Chick-fil-A of podcasts. Some of my favorites include the one with the man held hostage by Somali pirates, that's episode 115, and the pain psychologist about how pain lives in the brain, not in the body, episode 661. You can't go wrong with adding the Jordan Harbinger Show to your rotation. It's incredibly interesting and there's never a dull show. Search for the Jordan Harbinger Show, that's HARB as in boy, IN as in Nancy, GER, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. The Florida Panhandle isn't just the home of your favorite podcaster. That's me, by the way. Shameless, I know. But it's also a go-to spot for a lot of families on vacation. Don't plan a Pensacola trip without getting tickets to the UWF Historic Trust. It's good for a whole week, and it's a great indoor activity option. You'll recognize Trader John's where I record the show in the Pensacola Museum of History. Get your tickets in person so you can show the agent one of my emails and get $2 off an adult ticket. HistoricPensacola.org. Now back to the show. Remember to stay till the end where I give you a sneak peek of next week's episode. So take me to the night where it fell apart. You were in your dorm, I think, right?
I was in my dorm room at Rutgers. I'm 8 hours from home, but my relationship with my parents was still like this. Like, we talked every single day. So I called and talked to my parents. We had a conversation, talked to my mom, talked to my dad, hung up the phone, said our I love yous and goodbye. So everything at that moment when I hung up the phone seemed perfectly normal. Set my alarm clock, went to bed, woke up to my dad calling me to tell me that my mom died. And it was just a complete shock. Like, what happened? She's 45 years old. It's the middle of the night. Like, what happened? And he said, Lauren, I can't explain it now. Get on the next plane you can, and I'll be at the airport to pick you up. And so 18-year-old me is frantically like packing my bags. My roommate, Kara, has to use her emergency credit card to like book the plane. I mean, when I say chaos, like chaos ensues. We get on this plane, like, and y'all, this is before, like, this is when you're calling the airline, you're on hold, you don't have Ubers, like, none of that stuff existed. So, like, I'm frantically trying to get home and get to the airport. And at this point, the last time I had talked to my dad was after he said, get on the next plane you can, I'll be at the airport to pick you up. That was like the last conversation I had with him. So from there, it was, okay, plane touches down. I hadn't been able to get in touch with him. Now, mind you, he didn't have a cell phone. So like, he's at the hospital, he's out of the house. So every time I tried to call the home line, like, nobody answers. And my assumption is like, oh, he's not at the house. So then I'm like, okay, well, he's on his way to get me. But at this point, little did I know that he had already passed away. And so when my plane touches down, my uncle and my cousin show up to the airport. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, oh, thank goodness, familiar faces. We're going to get in the car. We're going to go drive and we're going to go see my dad. We're going home. We're going home. I can't wait to get home. And that's when they had to deliver the news that my dad had passed away as well. And so it was just like my entire world, everything in my world just like ripped out from underneath me.
Because you had no previous experience with loss or grief at all. You were 18. This was your first major death.
Yeah. Well, so of course the dog, and I don't want to put this out here for everybody to know, because we love to compare like griefs. Like when we have grievances and things are painful, we love to be like, well, mine's not as bad as yours. But like, that's your lived experience, And for me as a young 10, 11, 12-year-old, I guess it would have been, I think I was maybe 16 or 17 actually when Saber died. So our dog, but also we'll say this, my grandma, my mom, my dad's mom did pass away when I was young. I guess I was about probably 10 or 11. And I think the pain that I felt from that, I was super close with her and loved her dearly, but also seeing the pain that it caused my dad because his dad had already passed away. So this was his last living parent. So experiencing that, but I mean, this was just a grief that like you cannot prepare for. And I think that's what I'd love to say. And I'm going to go ahead and share this because I feel like now is a good place for it. So I also lost my brother, unfortunately, in November. And he was 42. He had been dealing with some health issues and still came as a kind of a shock to us. But here's the thing. Like, I thought, Meredith, that like when you go through grief and you go through like life, like I thought I had the suit of armor on. Like I have been through it with my parents. I have been through that, that heartache. I'm prepared. I'm equipped. Like nothing prepares you for grief. And so I just want to say that to those of you out there listening to this, is that you've walked through life, you've gone through challenges, you've gone through circumstances. I imagine most of you, many of you have gone through significant loss at some point in your life. And you just think, ooh, as I get older, I'm going to be more equipped. It's not going to sting quite as badly. And yet it does. And that's just like life. And that's hard. It is hard because you are enmeshed with these people in your life in some way. I'm enmeshed with my parents, enmeshed with my brother. We coexist and like we do life together. And then suddenly it's this just massive void. And I think that was like, for me, you almost in many ways, like I just felt so alone in the world. Like, how do you even pick up the pieces from this?
Yeah. And you had trouble even after the death of your parents and learning, in fact, how they died. you didn't read the coroner's report for like 10 years. And I guess I'm wondering, since we're talking about grief specifically, those two experiences, the death of your parents, the death of your brother. I spoke with a death doula a few months back, and she said when it comes to the grief, naming what's true is very important. And that's just so hard to do in life, even. And in death, there is a stronger temptation to glamorize the person that's passed or glaze over the circumstances around their death, which you struggled with. But now that you've named what's true about your parents, that they died of fentanyl overdose, how has that changed your grieving process for your brother?
Yeah, I'll tell you, the whole truth thing, you're so right. Oh, because naming that truth can be so hard because we love to put people on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And I think I did that for so many years because my parents were on a pedestal before they passed away. They were always up here. And yet realizing like they're not broken, they're human,
Mm-hmm.
just like me and you. And that's what I've had to realize and unpack in this process is we want to, especially it's this idea of legacy, right? Like I got to preserve the legacy at all costs. Like my parents could do no wrong. But who am I kidding? We can all do wrong and we all do wrong.
And at this point, I think with the way that media is changing, you got to remember, dear listener, that this was like when your parents died, this would have been 2016?
My parents died in 2003.
2003. Okay.
Yes.
So the opioid epidemic was like really
Just
ramping up.
Yes,
Right.
it was like at the very ground zero almost.
Yeah. And like social media wasn't yet a thing.
No.
So imagine, okay, 2016, that's like the shiny version of social media. That's when we still use those Instagram filters. And now we've kind of cycled into this authentic way of being. So I think it's important to realize, like, for people digesting the story, that this is before authenticity was like a buzzword. Like there was
Yeah.
still, we were on our way to shiny land, you know?
Uh-huh. Oh, that's so true. I think the authenticity piece is so important. I have not spoken a lot openly about my brother's passing and his struggles and the things he battled with. A lot of that is because my therapist has said, and this is where the struggle has become real. And this is why. Because you talk about authenticity, it's almost to the point where because I have found so much freedom from what happened to my parents and naming the truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And finding, I mean, I'm talking shackles of shame, but I've become such an open book about stuff. Let me tell you, like, even to the point where my husband's like, Lauren, could you please withhold some information? Like, I'm not good at withholding information. Now, obviously, if it's sensitive information and it is told to me, like, I will keep a secret all day, every day. And I am put in situations. Well, first of all, as a reporter, I'm in a lot of situations where information gets to me that it should not be for public knowledge. Number one. But number two, being in closed situations in groups, there is an anonymity type of threshold. And within that, like that's kind of like you walk into a room of Al-Anon, AA, whatever it is, like you keep that anonymous. So then my brother passes away and it's just like, how do I even name this? What do I do with this? And I am still unpacking a lot of his life and his struggles and the things that led him down his road, because for him, he was in the military. Like he literally, like I go back to Rutgers when my parents die. Oh, we love you. We're gonna wrap our arms around you and we're gonna rally behind you, Lauren. Well, guess what my brother does? He goes back to his command in Virginia Beach, where he is stationed as a parachute rigger. He deploys. He goes and fights for our country. Like, you think he had people wrapping their arms around him saying, it's okay, buddy. You just have a seat and take a break for a moment. And so I am really unpacking a lot of that. And my therapist literally said to me, she says, don't feel like don't put a microphone to something you're still processing.
I love that.
And let me tell you, because I am an open book, and one day I know, have the strength and courage to share my brother's story in its fullest form as I know it, not as he knows it, but as I know it, because his story and my story become very enmeshed in so many ways. But I also love, and I think I want to encourage people this because there is so much freedom to naming the truth, but also there is a time and a place and a process. And I would just encourage you, people out there listening. It has been actually, in a lot of ways, therapeutic for me to sit in this grief with my brother. Because I'll tell you this, when my parents died, and this is also me reflecting on a lot of it, I was running as fast as I could from the reality. What was happening? What was happening? The fact that they died of prescription drug overdoses, both dying 5 hours apart from fentanyl overdoses, because gosh forbid, my parents were not addicts. No way, no how. We can't name that. Right. So there's the shame for that. So I ran. And this grief that I've felt with my brother, I've equated it to being like in the ocean, just floating up and down in the waves and the current like a buoy. Like I'm in it. And I'm thankful for that because I think that I watch myself become so exhausted running so hard, so fast from the grief. And now, again, 18 years old, I'm now 40. I'd like to say I'm a little more mature. I don't know. To be determined, right? To be debated. But I do think that I've just been in it. And in a lot of ways, it has put me where my feet are. And I love that saying so much. And I've leaned into it so much, be where your feet are. And I think instead of running, I'm like, I can't outrun this thing. It is literally here to tackle me to the ground. So just be in it. Let's just have a conversation. Let's just be with it. Don't try to run away from it because you ain't never going to outrun it.
That's so true. And the sticky part, I think, for a lot of families who are dealing with addiction, meaning themselves or with people that they love, is we have a storybook version of what the truth is. It's got a capital T and it's black or it's white. And so you're either a good guy or you're a bad guy because that's how storybook books are. Like that's the story, the fairy tale, right? And so to have something that it's like a nuanced middle. Yes, your parents were doing everything that they could to support you and your brother. And yes, and they were freezing their fentanyl patches. Like it's yes and I think that's what societally we could use a little bit more practice at is the yes and. So I'd love for you to speak to families out there who are dealing with addiction because although a lot of these pharmaceutical companies, a lot of these pain clinics, pill mills have been busted, these prescriptions are still pretty freely given out with no consideration of a person's past history, no consideration of their financial predicament. They are just handed out still. And so I wonder what you would say to someone who's trying to reconcile that middle part, the gray part for themselves.
Ooh, that is so good. Even in writing my book, like there was so much research that had to be done and understanding. And just to know that like my dad literally overdosed at Thanksgiving, survived. Little did I know he overdosed, but I was made to think it was a bad reaction to medication, which to
Right.
me was like, oh, blood pressure, cholesterol. 3 weeks later, he's got another 90-day supply of Oxycontin. Like, are you kidding me? And I know the systems have changed and evolved. We're in an electronic age where now it's like everything's kind of put into one system. And so it is a little bit harder to quote unquote doctor shop. But like, my dad is not doctor shopping. He's literally going back to the same doctor that he's been going to. And you're being prescribed the same thing. My parents had over 350 narcotics prescribed to them legally at one given time. What? Are you kidding me? And you think about that. So you talk about that gray area. And I think that is, oh, it's such a challenge because things are so easily accessible. And I'll say this is actually something I've wanted to address. And I think that sometimes we do have to be sensitive with the way because we do, I think, glamorize sometimes. Oh, you got a headache? Just go pop a pill, right? Or, oh, I mean, this gets me. Like somebody will go have surgery and they'll get a thing of Vicodin or something. And somebody will be like, hey, don't toss your Vicodin. I'll take it. Like jokingly. But that is very triggering in so many ways because there are people that literally do struggle with that and do have to be mindful of if I go get surgery, even as simple as a wisdom tooth cutout, like I need to know what my body and my brain are going to do to react to that. And everybody's different. Narcotics, opioids make me sick as a dog. Like I throw up for days. But for my parents, euphoria, as you said, right? That euphoria that puts them in a place where they just are numb. They don't feel the pain, but they also don't feel the trouble and the chaos that is just rapidly ensuing around them. And so I want to make sure I answer the question the right way. I think it's so important for people to number one be educated and for us to kind of eliminate some of the glamorization that we have for the use of drugs. Hey, it'll make you feel better. And we're talking about drugs, we're talking about opioids, we're talking about alcohol, we're talking about marijuana, we're talking about all the things. And I'm not here to get into oh, should it be legal, this, that, and the other. No, I'm just here to say that everyone responds differently, just like anything else, right? I mean, if you ask me, some people say I should be 1,000 pounds because I have a love relationship with food. Like I just love food. I love food. I work out a lot to try to combat the eating of the calories, but I mean, I love food. And so I think there's so many different ways addiction can just rear its head. And I think it's so important for people where they're at right now. Number one, if they have some sort of addiction, number one, they're not alone because as humans, we all have some sort of complex. We have some sort of pull to something, number one. And that's okay. That does not make you less than, it does not make you unworthy. And I think that's where I just wish that my parents would have had the courage to speak up and to say, hey, like I am battling this thing and it is taking us down. But yet shame, like shame. And you know what? Shame wants to tell you to go sit in that corner in the darkness. Don't bring it to light. We don't talk about it. And that is the problem with our society, is that we attach shame labels to so many things. And then we say, go sit in the corner. Don't talk about it. And then we're left to fight these battles alone in the darkness and ultimately creating a society that, like you said, puts a filter on everything. But underneath it all, there is a fight and a struggle that pushes people and almost demonizes people to the point where they feel unworthy, less than, and I can't talk about it. And I just hate that because it pains me to know that my parents ever felt that way. Because I think if they walked in the door today, I've thought about it so many times, Meredith. If they walked in that door today and said, hey, we need to talk, I would just love nothing more to just sit down at the table with them, sit down on the edge of the bed and just hear them out, hear their pain, hear their struggle, and just love on them. I just would love to give them that chance. And so my hope in my heart for any of you that are struggling is that you give yourself that chance because you deserve it.
And I think people are much more receptive now to the struggle because of what you're doing right now, being open about it. So thank you for sharing.
Woo!
Yeah, I appreciate that because it does make a difference. It does take the sting out of it, I think. When you can hear someone tell their story, even if it's wildly different than your own, there's something about that it's like cathartic a little bit, and it almost like primes the landscape for disclosure, whatever disclosure amount or in whatever way that you need it as well. And like I said at the beginning of our time today, writing your story is hard and easy to read your book and you're like, oh God, this is obvious because it's laid out in literal chapters, literally chapter 1, chapter 2, you can see it clearly.
Yeah.
But what you're sharing now is an important reminder that when you're in it, there are no chapters. It feels like a disaster. So thank you. And I'm so glad that we met.
Well, I am too. Like this, what a great conversation. And I just have to prop you up because I just love like the approach that you take with the different guests that you have. And I now, kind of have you on my radar. So I hope to listen to more of your podcast. But I think that again, we do just live in a world where it's just let's gloss and let's sugarcoat and do all those things. But I just love how you pull the curtains back in such a unique way that really has an ability. Like even you said, like meeting with a death doula, like to me, that is like an area of life. Like I would never in a million years think to go down that path, but there is something for everybody. And I think that's the cool part because you said everyone has a story. And even while your story and my story may look very different, you sit down with a cup of coffee in your hands. For me, I don't drink coffee. Talk about a vice like Coke Zero or Diet Coke. Give me a soda all day, every day. But all that to say, we're going to sit down and have a conversation. I love what you said there. It's like the whole idea of disarming someone. And when you disclose information, even though your story is very different than mine and mine is very different than yours, when you start to disclose information, you give the person permission, right? And it's the idea of me too. And
Yeah.
that's, again, we're not comparing, but it's, and you give that person the permission to speak up, to share their heart and to share their soul on whatever level that is. It might just be a little, it might be a lot, and that's okay. But I think when you have that permission, that then gives you the courage to suddenly walk through life in a way that doesn't push you into the darkness, but brings you out into the light and into the sunshine.
Absolutely. Well, I will be encouraging everyone to get your book, Shatterproof: How I Overcame the Shame of Losing My Parents to Opioid Addiction and Found My Sideline Shimmy. So thank you again, Lauren, and I know we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you so much, and best of luck to you.
Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, you'll also like the one with the death doula. That's episode 278. And stay tuned next week when I talk with a philosopher about AI blackmail. Until then, keep it curious.